Okay, the Indians had come up to meet with President Polk over their affairs and everything. This is when he was a Texas senator, when Houston was a Texas senator. And so one of the chiefs got very seriously ill, and he finally died. And Houston wrote Margaret that he had gone to the funeral of this Cherokee chief's on such and such a day in Washington, D.C. And I kept saying, why isn't he telling the name of the chief? You know, why hasn't he mentioned the name of the chief? I spent, I don't know how many months researching, trying to find, I looked at everywhere trying to find the name of this chief, couldn't find it. And the whole time the number 5 kept popping up in my head, and I didn't pay much attention to it. And then I was over in the genealogical library, and 5 tribes starts popping up. And I didn't even know they had an Indian section in this genealogical library. And so I go over there, and I see this book, 5 Civilized Tribes. And I flip it open, and I don't find any information that I'm looking for, and I'm trying to figure out, now what can I look up to maybe find this? I looked up President Polk, and it has the Indians going to visit him. So I go to that page, and here's the information about the chief dying. Not only that, and Houston had paid for the money for the doctor to take care of him. Not only that, but it has the address in Washington where the chief was living and where he died. And the reason he didn't mention the name was because he was one of the Jollies, one of the Rogers.
Oh.
He didn't want Margaret.
He didn't want Margaret to, evidently. Now, she had no qualms at all about his marriage to Eliza. In fact, she even wrote him one time that his wife had, her brother had seen Mrs. Douglas, and she was a handsome woman. But for some reason, he didn't want to put down the name.
John Rogers. He didn't want to. That's interesting.
But I have no idea how I found that information.
Well, maybe he and Margaret never. Maybe
No, I don't know how I found it in the library.
Yeah, sometimes when you're looking for stuff like that, something that you're not even looking for necessarily will turn up, and you say, well, how did that happen?
Well, and another time, you know, the pastor that he had in Washington, D.C., you know, Houston was a big fan of Napoleon. And the pastor went over to Africa and traced the path that Napoleon had followed in Africa. And his handwriting was just atrocious. I couldn't make out what, he went to such and such pyramids, and I couldn't make out what pyramids it was. And I looked in every Egyptian book I could find, and couldn't find the name of these pyramids. And I ran up to the neighborhood library by our house to copy something, because I didn't have a copy machine in those days. So I make my copies, and I turn around, and here's this blank table, and there's a book laying face down on the table here. And it's the only thing on this table, this book, face down. I don't know why I went over and picked up that book, but I did. And when I flipped it over, here was the map of Napoleon's route through Africa. And here was the pyramids, plain as day, the name of the pyramids. And I could make out enough of the letters to tell that that's what I could recognize from this pastor's. Now, how on earth did I do that? You know, I just have no idea.
The result of clean living.
There you go.